Love is beautiful, but let's be real, it ain't always easy. We've been through the storms, the highs, the lows, and everything in between.
But through it all, we made a choice again and again. We chose love, we chose commitment, we chose us.
Because marriage isn't just about saying I do, it's about choosing to stay.
Welcome to We Chose Us, because love is worth the fight. Number up. If you guys really like our transparency, if you like our love for one another, we want to be able to do that, right? And then we want the opportunity as well for maybe some couples out there. We might even bring y'all on, right? We might do that. What else might we do? I don't know. We might do some giveaways, right? Maybe we can do something like that. Maybe we can actually set up like a marriage seminar or a boot camp. Or even a retreat.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Or in advance. Yeah. I like to use the word advance, not necessarily retreat, but in advance, right? Yeah. And we just want to be able to help people along the way, right? So even if you got some questions, what I would like for you to do, because I created an email as well, it's at show@wechoseus.com. If you got some questions, reach out to us. If you got some prayer requests, reach out to us. Like I knew this was good and we were open and honest, but this is even before the first episode dropped, and y'all are already in our DMs telling me, or telling Chris more so. Y'all don't really tell me anything. Y'all reach out to her when y'all want like prayer, but that's because she pray on Monday mornings, every Monday morning at 6 p.m. That's a drop. That's a plug. 6 a.m. Excuse me. That's a plug. That's a plug. Brian, you don't have to edit that out. We rolling with it. Shouts out to Brian as well, the epic producer back there that's doing marvelous things. But yeah, so one of the things that we wanted to kind of address though is that, we looked at the last episodes and we were talking about some things. We took some questions as well, and some things that were about like restoration. And so we want to name this specific episode, Don't Rush Restoration. So you heard from me, right? So Chris, what are your thoughts about how like things have been going down the last couple of weeks since we dropped this trailer?
I think I have really been surprised, right? I didn't really have major expectations, I guess you would say, for our podcast. It was just a way for us to get our story out, you know, just obedience to God, and just say, hey, he really led and directed us, through our marriage. And it just felt like it was time for us to share our story, but I did not expect the overwhelming response. And it just blessed me to know that we can be a blessing, because I can't say we're perfect, far from it. We're still going through the process. So even to be able to heal in real time, to even be in a space where we tell our story while we're still going through, and to be open and honest in those very moments, I think are going to be more of a blessing than just even sharing what we've overcome, And so to be able to have this podcast, I'm excited. I think I was just really shocked to see the amount of response, and even the amount of marriages who just need God, and the amount of marriages who are in this breaking point, on the brink of divorce. And some are separated. Like, people were open and honest about that. And so I'm like, at this point, I'm on fire, because I'm like, if this could help save a marriage, God, use us, in any capacity, shape, form, or fashion you desire, because I wouldn't have ever known that there would be so many marriages who are crying out to God to say, I need you. I need your help. Yeah. So I'm just like, all right, God, you got this, we're your vessels. So.
Yeah, and understand that when we do this, like, this is unscripted. We're not saying what we're going to talk about, what we're not going to talk about. We had a discussion about that the other day, because she said, "Well, I want to talk about this," and I was like, "I ain't ready yet."
He did.
I ain't ready.
It almost took us to a little argument, because it was like, we got to be honest. Like, and he's like, "I'm not ready for that type of honesty yet. That's still a story I'm still healing from, and I'm not ready for that." And so it was like, well, I mean, I think it's important to talk about. And I'm like, all right, if you're not ready, we'll wait.
One day. One day. But okay, so let's kind of frame this up real quick. So the first episode, we were talking about our relationship, and we were talking about certain like just events that specifically were happening throughout the time that we had the church and through the marriage and stuff like that. But let's start at like what the breaking point. I know what my breaking point was, right? But what was your breaking point? And you can say whether it's the relationship or in the church or both. It doesn't matter. But what would you say would be like one of your or the breaking point with us or the church?
Now, see, my breaking point goes to that story you wasn't ready to share, but we're not going to share it. So we'll give an overview. I would say just overall, when it came to the ministry, when it came to our marriage, my breaking point was realizing that I could not, and I just did not want to carry my broken pieces and yours. It felt like just this heavy weight of brokenness in our house. I remember our house was not a home. It did not feel comforting. It felt like depression just reeked the entire atmosphere. And at that moment, because it was coming from both the church and our marriage, but I honestly feel like it came from the church because our marriage was broken. And so everywhere we went, it was just brokenness. And I think I got into a point where I was just like, I can't carry you and me and our kids.
Yeah.
Because I'm raising our kids. You're in and out. You're kind of in this space. And when I say in and out, just emotionally just drained consistently, dealing with depression and anxiety. And I think I got to a point, and I remember, I think I was talking to my sister, and I was like, I just feel like I have no escape because I'm dealing with depression now. I wasn't at first, but I feel like because there was so much depression coming off of you, I felt like there was no outlet, and I just, as a result, fell into it as well. And I think trying to raise the kids as well as me encountering depression and then having to encourage you. But then when I needed encouragement, remember that would cause an argument because you would be like, I don't know what to say to you. And I'm like, I mean, can you just say something to help me? But you didn't have the capacity.
Yeah.
And so I think at that moment, I was like, this is to me, this was draining. It was, I was unhappy. I think both of us were in this space where it was just like, I don't know how we can come out of this.
Yeah.
And when I felt like there was no hope, that's when I was like, this is a breaking point. Because it was certain things leading up to this. Like, I remember, like, for example, let's say the church and marriage side, right? I remember we were at our church in Bible study. I'm gonna try to go through this episode without crying, but we were at our church in Bible study, and you, like, literally one of our team members came and got you, and it was because they were repossessing our car. I had no idea about it. Like, I didn't even know the bill, the car note wasn't paid or anything. And so you go running outside to the car trying to stop the repo man. And, but this is happening at our church in Bible study with members there.
Yep.
And the most heartbreaking, I think, moment for me was when our members came outside with trash bags to clean out our car because it was being repossessed, the pastor's car.
Yeah.
This is stuff that nobody knows but our members, right?
Yeah.
And they came out with these trash bags, and it was so embarrassing. Oh my gosh. Like, reliving that moment. We're on stage teaching Bible study, teaching about God's faithfulness, teaching about the word of God and prosperity. And when I say prosperity, meaning God desires, for your life to be fulfilled and whole. Yep. But yet in the middle of Bible study, we had to stop because you ran out. We didn't know what was going on. And I remember ending Bible study because I was teaching. I remember ending Bible study, and literally people had to walk outside to go to their cars, and they saw what was happening. They started grabbing trash bags to clean out our car.
Yeah.
And they watched as the repossession man took our car.
Yeah.
And I mean, it was stuff like that. That was just like, God, what is happening?
Yeah.
But it wasn't just the repossession. It was like, this is happening at our church. But also, why isn't my husband telling me about this stuff?
Yeah.
And I remember we would get into it because I would be like, why aren't you just telling me, like, babe, I'm struggling with paying the note. Okay, what? And I kept telling you we could just sit at the table, figure out ways to get the bills paid, because most of the money was going to the church. So I think it was just a tug of war, but you were so embarrassed. Depression had already overtaken you. So any glimpse of you opening up to me was just like, not going to happen, because it was redundant. It was just like, why don't you just tell me? Like, we can work through this together, and you just never would. And so that led up to like one of the major points for me. And I remember we just kept moving. We just kept moving forward. It was almost like sweeping these things under a rug and just saying, all right, but we still got this church, so we got to go. We just got to we gotta kind of keep faith, keep moving on, keep pastoring, keep doing what we're doing. But it kept happening. And even from that, I remember we moved to another location. But I remember, again, like, we were separated. We kind of talked about this on the last episode. And you had called me. I got in a new car, and you had called me and was like, babe, I'm sorry. Your car got repossessed. And it was like, this is wait, what? This just happened. You know what I mean? Like, how did this happen? And I only know now, because we went through therapy and things like that, that you were just checked out. And so things that seemed important or seemed like impossible to forget for me, like, how could you forget? We have kids. These are our cars. These are things that are necessities for us. How could things like that slip your mind? And I just didn't understand the level and the weight of depression and the pressure that you were under, mainly even coming from pastoring, coming from just your own emotions, your own experiences. And I think after all of that, it felt like insanity. I'm just allowing these things to keep happening over and over again. And at that moment, I broke. And I was like, I can't carry you and me and our kids. Like, I don't know how we're going to move forward from this. And so I just felt like we needed to pull the plug.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's so much in that you said to unpack. I remember when that happened with the car. I remember running outside, and she didn't tell y'all, like, I sat in the car.
He did.
I sat in
like
the
protesting.
car, and I was protesting. And I was like, dude, put the car down. Like, y'all don't understand, like, it was something, it was definitely embarrassing, but my whole thing was like, I got my wife, I got my daughter who's not even a year, car seat. Like, it was just kind of like, nah, like, this ain't going down like this, bro. Like, no, you know, and a lot of me was like, I didn't even know. Well, I'll tell you this, like, this was during the time where you weren't working, and I was the only one that was working. And I can say this now, and man, I hope that you're listening as well. Like, when you need help, say you need help. I was expecting my wife to step in and help. Like, I was expecting her to say, I see there's a struggle. Now let me get a job or let me do something like that. Like, I was like holding out and waiting for her, because I know that when she had left her last job, like, I told her, go ahead and leave, because I'll take care of everything, because I can tell that you're struggling being here and all that. You remember that? And I was like, you know, go ahead and leave and all this stuff. And so I don't know how, you know, it was probably like a year or so after that. But instead of me saying, all right, babe, like, look, it ain't happening. You're going to have to, you know, go back and get another job. And I didn't say anything, and I kept my mouth closed, and I figured that I could just buy enough time. One of the things that she said as well is that a lot of our money did go to the church, because we had ended up going into a new building, right, that we said it was God, right?
Yep.
Like this is what happened. We say it's God. You walk 7 times around it. The guy calls you and it's like, you know what? I'm looking for somebody. I need to offload this building. The rent is $10,000 a month, but I'll give it to you for, I think it was like $2,000 or something. And we were like, all right, bet, that's a deal. Run it. We were leaving a building where we couldn't handle $750 a month, you know, between us. And here we are doing $2,000, but we're trusting God, believing God.
And we were convinced. That this was God. Because all the things were lining up. This guy said, hey, you know, I need to offload this. And we just, I feel like we convinced ourselves.
We did.
Instead of just clearly hearing.
But, you know, part of it is because I had, this is, you got to watch your relationships and the people that you hang around as well.
Yeah.
Because I remember we were at our first church. And I had guys reaching out to me because our marketing was like, our marketing for the bar was top tier. Like I had people calling, man, what are you guys doing? Remember we had like tryouts for like worship singers and stuff like that. Like we was like going really hard. And a guy reached out to me and you know, he took me all around in different areas, showed me all the different churches that he had and was, you know, I guess he was trying to develop a friendship or something like that. So anyway, fast forward to, I said, okay, cool. Why don't you come check out the building? He was like, okay. And he comes in and basically knocks everything that we got going on, from what the children ministry looked like, from how the chairs were set up, to all these different things. He sits in the back of the church while I'm preaching. And, you know, obviously it's a startup church, so not that many people there. And then he was just like, this is too small. This is too small. This is too small. And I listened.
It was pressure.
It was like, yeah, you know what? This is too small. Not the reality of this is what our budget
This is our beginning.
Yeah, this is our beginning. Like, and not getting in the weeds and trying to dig ourselves out and really trust God in that way. We thought that it was that we didn't have enough faith.
Yep, that part.
We thought we didn't have enough faith.
Yep.
And so this right here, us getting this building and God making it so it's from $10,000 to $2,000 a month, this is our faith working.
Yep.
Right? And so then we get in there. Now, mind you, like we had a thing nice laid out. Marketing was great. It was a very nice building. He halfway didn't move out, but we'll talk about that another time. So, you know, and he let us have the building for a minute, but it was interesting things that started happening. I would get phone calls and long texts. Like, you know, when somebody texts you on the iPhone so much that you can't read it in the window, it goes to another window.
Yep.
And this is like 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. So this is what you're opening yourself up to is you're already stressed. You got your kids, you're worried and all these different things. And this guy keep texting you and you don't even respond. Keep texting you. And here I am like, I don't even know what to do. Yeah. It's not like I don't want to help you out and kind of pay this, right? But the thing is, Sunday we only have 5 people in service.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Some days you'll walk in there, there'll be 25, 30. Some days you'll walk in there, there'll only be just a few people and that's it.
Yeah.
And it just didn't work out. So when the repossession happened, like that was a big struggle. And I remember we got taken home. Shouts out to the St. Louis's who took us home.
I remember drove us home.
They drove us home. And I remember you were sitting on the couch and I laid in your lap. And I was just like, you know, I didn't know. I don't know if I said anything or anything like that. And that was the first one. The second one, again, if you don't speak up, nobody knows what you need. And
that was the thing.
The second one was that we had an agreement. Okay, Chris, you'll take care of this one, and I'll take care of the other vehicle and all the other stuff. But the thing is, I needed to tell you, hey, Chris, this is what to do.
Right.
And I didn't say it because I felt like, again, that I could shoulder it, right? And we had went through our, we were separated because you were at your mom's, I think. And, and when they came, like I heard the car being dragged out the driveway. Like I heard the tires being skirt. and I looked outside, and
you called me crying.
I called you because I had a break. I blacked out. I had a breakdown. That was the second time though. The first time I broke down was different, but that was the second time I blacked out, and I woke up and I called you crying because I didn't even know what happened. And again, being able to communicate and talk, I believe what people should get out of this story is communication is key. Being open and honest is key, right?
Or I feel like trusting your spouse enough to say when you need help. Trusting your spouse enough to let them know that you're not okay. Because oftentimes, even for women too, we're good at putting on masks. We're good at walking around and being the strong one. Yeah. Not just men, not just women, but men too. Everyone feels like they have the responsibility to be strong. Yeah. But if you can't trust your spouse, you get what I mean? Yeah. Who else would you trust? I know you can trust God, but if you can't be open and honest with your spouse, then where's your safe space? Right. Where's that level where you can release the weight? And so I would agree with that. It's not just communication, but it's being okay with going to your spouse and saying, listen, I'm not okay. I'm not okay. And not fearing judgment from that. Because I think we fear that if I say I'm not okay, then my spouse is going to look at me like, you're supposed to have it together. That's not what it's about. You're my safe space. Yeah. And I should be okay with saying I'm not okay, because I feel like more weight is revealed when we put on, because then when we get to that breaking point, all of the bricks fall in the person that's in the lap of the person that's closest to you. Yeah. And so if you're just open and honest, it's like offlaying one brick versus thousands. Yeah.
But do you feel, because I remember, so, you know, everybody wants this, I want to ride or die chick, you know what I'm saying? And so sometimes it's a ride until chick, you know what I'm saying? And so at that time, I think because of everything that had been going on, I didn't consider you a ride or die. I considered you a ride until. I can say that because I can think of things of me even now. Your mom, your dad, that's my mom, my dad. You know what I'm saying? And family is like that. But I remember going over to like your dad's house or whatever and not really trying to get to know people, because in the back of my mind, I'll probably be, you know, like not necessarily probably be gone, temporary. But yeah, but it just felt like it didn't feel like it was forever. And so it was just like, these are just people that, you know, they're just around, it's cool or whatever. But, you know, I wasn't anticipating leaving or nothing like that, but it was just more so like, I didn't try. And it wasn't until years later where now I'm just kind of like, oh man, this is my fam. Like, this is my fam. And I think back then, developing that trust is something we both had to grow to, but we didn't really have the opportunity.
That was the thing.
We didn't have the opportunity.
We didn't have the opportunity to, we got married at the altar, but we didn't have an opportunity to be married. Right. You get what I mean? Like, immediately after we said our vows, we launched the church and we had Kaylin. Yep. So our marriage was then responsibility based. There was no time for you and I. And that's why, for anyone who doesn't know this, that's why we've been married for 10 years, but have had 7-8 years of complete chaos. I don't, still to this day, I just thank God, because to me, I don't see how it was possible to have a 8-year marriage of just turmoil and depression and chaos and still be married and make it to 10 years. After 1 or 2, people are like, I'm done. This isn't it. But 8 years. And to say, I mean, but I feel like the responsibility is what kept us there. It was like one of the talking points, or rather the questions I wanted to ask was, and this leads to that, was just kind of like when you feel like your business partners, or you feel like you're just pastors or just parents? Does that keep a marriage going, right? Mm-hmm. Because it's like you can be in the same house, but you're not best friends. You're not lovers. There was no intimacy. Mm-hmm. Like we would go.
Look, she said that the first episode, and here she is, a third episode, still bringing it up. But it's take two to tango, ma'am.
No, that's what I'm saying. No, I'm saying for both of us. Like I don't think I said this in the first episode about how long we would go in the beginning of our marriage without intimacy.
Man, that thing right there had me.
I want to say maybe a good. I mean, we've gone in the beginning of our marriage a good year.
Ooh, it was 8 months.
8 months, yeah.
8 months.
And we're newlyweds.
Yeah, this was definitely after we had Kaylin.
Yeah.
And yeah.
And so what kept us there is I believe that we had a church to pastor. Mm-hmm. We had a daughter to raise. Mm-hmm. And it was like, chop it up. We got responsibility. We got stuff to do. So you literally are just going through the motions, but we were not happy.
No, we weren't. Mm-mm.
The house was not a home. There was no comfort. There was no intimacy. We would have little pockets, but for the majority of our marriage, it was like, put your big girl panties on, put your big boy drawers on. We got a church to pastor.
We got a church to pastor.
That's it.
And I think I even said this in the first episode. It's like we had got to the point where I just feel like we were just good at like putting on the front. Like we knew how to do church. We knew how to do people and loving people, and we knew how to help people. We were counseling people. We were doing marriage counseling with people. Remember?
We were.
And
but we didn't know how to do each other.
We did not how to counsel each other. When it came to us, boy, there would be time. Me and Chris, we couldn't even have no conversation without getting in an argument. But the reason why we're where we are now, because I know a lot of people will be like, "How did y'all get here?" Is number one, when we started doing therapy virtually with Dr. O. And remember, he would sit down and he would ask the tough questions. And he would make us answer those questions in front of each other. Yeah. He would not back down. And when we would be going through therapy, sometimes I'd be like, that's it, we done. That was the worst one ever. But it was something that was happening. It was almost like a chiseling away of different things, right? Like there was pain in the discussion, but it allowed us to strip off a lot of that old stuff, all of that weight, you know, like how the Bible says to lay aside every weight that so easily besets you. Yeah. And that's what it was. It was the different weights. And I know that from session to session, it felt like things were getting worse and worse and worse. But at the same time, we were able to move clearly. I remember when we were going through therapy and he says, y'all go out on a date.
We were
Negro,
date. Married. I don't want to date you.
Date. And he was like, nah, y'all go out on a date. All right, where we gonna go? So we go out on this date. And, we there, we sitting. It was at that little, it was in downtown Atlanta. Remember we were sitting outside and that homeless guy kept walking around and I was like, man, I'm gonna have to, you know what I'm saying? Because he looked like he was about trying to rob somebody. Anyway, he was like, y'all just talk. And so we had a couple words and then I think we started having a little argument while we were there. Mm-hmm. And I was like, man, this junk is stupid. Yep. And so we came back to the session and he was like, y'all go on a date? Yeah, we went on a date. All right, good. He said, y'all went out on a date. And I was like, but it ain't go good. And he was like, that wasn't the point. He said, y'all actually went out on a date.
Right.
And I was like, here we go. So this guy's trying to give us step by step. So, so the next one is going to be better. And the next one was better.
It was. Mm-hmm.
And by like the third or fourth one, we were actually able to have a conversation without an argument.
Yeah.
And it was like, like this actually could work.
Yeah. I think it was, like you said, taking the time, because think about it. We would go home. We would barely talk. We would argue. And so sitting us down to say the hard things was it wasn't just taking away the layers or the pressure or the weight. To me, it was bringing out the unspoken, because that is the pressure. Is all that you hold in on a daily basis that you're afraid to talk about, but that stuff builds up because the enemy starts using that as vulnerability to start offering all of these suggestions and all of these different things. And it creates a whole nother scenario in your mind, which is what I believe causes us to emotionally break and emotionally make those decisions to quit and to give up. And that's what it was. I know for me personally, there was so much unspoken, even from the beginning of our marriage, that I just would not say because I was always afraid that I would hurt your feelings. I was afraid of disappointing God. You know, I was afraid of letting myself down, not being a woman enough to speak up for myself and things like that. And it was all of that pressure for me. And so being in this counseling opened a door for me to say what I needed to say, because I don't think I ever would have said it. So in my mind, the enemy kind of played completely on that. My emotions played on that. And it was like, our marriage is not going anywhere because this, that, and that. And that was all those voices, all of those thoughts, all of those things that I kept internally. And I know one thing for me, and this is probably one of the hardest things for you, that I had to say to you in counseling. Oh, and it was that I'm not in love with you. And I think it broke you.
Yeah.
And it broke me to say it, because here's my husband, and I had to openly say to you, I'm not in love with you. Like, but it hurt, but it was so doggone freeing, because I had been feeling that way for so long, because I never, like, our relationship was so, like, just kind of skewed and unbalanced. It was just like, I don't know what happened to the love, but it wasn't there. And I was so scared, like trembling to tell you, because who wants to sit there and tell their spouse that they're not in love with them? That's the number one thing you desire from a spouse, is someone who's head over heels for you. And when I had to tell you that, like, but it removed so much of the weight for me. And I had to sit there and look at you, like, kind of in this, wait, what? But it was like, all right, it's out. I can't take it back. It's out. And it was like hard. And that's what we mean by hard conversation.
It was hard conversation. Yep, sure was.
And it was like, but whatever gonna happen after this, I'm glad I let it out, because that was part of healing for me, because that had been inside and bottled up for so long. And it wasn't like, but that I'm not in love with you voice, it was because I held it in, started turning into like resentment, and this is why I don't like him, and all of this other stuff, because I never felt like I could let it out. And I think you have to release stuff in order to start healing from it, you know? And it's like, when I said that, all of those voices just stopped. And I just started getting this openness to just see you for you, and not all of the negative and not all of the things that I tallied up against you. Was because of that one moment of honesty. And it was like, God, you're gonna have to help us through this level of honesty. But it's out here.
It's out here. And that was a tough moment. I think it was rough, because here it is, the one that, you know, for rich or for poor, for sickness and health. But for me, it was validation of, you ain't no ride or die. Like that literally confirmed it. Like, I knew she wasn't in it, you know. And looking back, that's something that, you know certain things in the back of your mind, but you're just waiting on the validation and things of that nature. And when you did say that, it was definitely a hurtful moment, because I remember I called a couple of my friends, and I probably called my cousin too, and I was just going in, like, I couldn't even believe it, because it wasn't just that you said you weren't in love with me. I think you said you were never, or you said you were never in love with me. And that was the part that was just kind of like, wait, never?
Yeah.
And that's the part, honestly, but the truth of the matter is, I didn't think it was really never. Yeah. I felt like that was a bit of revisionist history. I feel like you couldn't remember. It's been so long since you had, because I remember the joy that we had before even getting married, and the time that we used to spend together. Remember, we would just spend time together. We wasn't even dating at the time. We have to tell y'all that whole story about how we wasn't really even dating, and I end up popping the question. Yeah. But it's one of those things where, it for me, it was like, all right, she said it, and I know there was like no turning back. Yeah. And it just didn't happen that way. So like, I wanted to talk about my breaking point, but I really want to hear from you. Like because I feel people want to know. What changed, and how did you realize that you still did love me or fall back in love with me?
I would say the defining moment. There's this one particular moment that occurred that caused me to completely release everything to God. And that is when I went to a women's conference. Remember, I traveled by myself to Maryland, went to a women's conference, and someone was preaching. And when they was preaching, I was sitting there literally on the front row, and she stepped down on the stage, and she was right here. And she started saying things like, it was literally like she was telling my story. And she was like, you may not like him. You may hate him. You might not ever been in love with him. I mean, it was like, talking to me? and she's standing literally right there in front of me. And it was like she just kept saying all of the things that I was thinking, all of the things that we were talking about in counseling, the unresolved internal things in me. And she was just preaching all of that in front of me. And she said, but God says, drop to the floor right now and surrender. And all I remember was I fell to the floor, and I just said, God, I give it to you. And I just felt her hand touch me. And I don't know if it was a prayer line or not. I don't know. But I know in that moment, I just said, God, I surrender. I don't know what you're doing from this particular space, what you're doing in the position that I'm in now. I don't know what where my surrender is going to carry me, but I'm trusting you in this moment. And I remember just laying out to God, and I say, I give up the old thoughts. I give up the past. I give up the brokenness. I give up the pieces. I give up the pressure. I give you the weight. I give you the resentment. I give you the guilt. I give you the shame. I literally was just like calling out everything that I had been dealing with. And I remember from that moment, God says, now start new. Literally, that's what he said to me. And I remember flying back, and I just said, I'm just going to open myself to whatever's new. I can't keep calculating the past. I can't keep holding account of everything that happened because, I was good at that.
Hey, y'all, this joker was an accountant.
Like,
when it came
I
to like,
tell you what you did, when you did it, how you did it. And don't try to come at me with no type of argument, because I'm about to bust you down with all of the stuff that you did to hurt me.
Give me the rundown.
Yes. I couldn't let it go. And I knew that was part of our blocker, because we couldn't have regular conversation without me saying, you said what?
Yeah.
Well, let me tell you.
Yeah. And that would be a fear of mine.
I would not let it go. Do you know how many cars got repossessed? You know that. And then I had to do it. Like, I felt entitled. That was the word. I felt entitled. I felt like you owed me. Mm-hmm. And that, I believe, kept me away from healing in our marriage, because I felt like you owed me. Like, I'm not doing nothing till you give me what you owe me, because I feel like you took so much from me. And that's when God said surrender. If you want this marriage to work, and that's the key, you got to want it. And I was just like, God, I want this to work. And and then I was at a point where I was like, but do I? Or do you want me to want it to work? I'm not quite sure. And I remember going back and forth, and I was just like, no, you know what it is? And this is what I said to myself, which is so funny. I said, I'm scared to move out of this marriage and then resent what could have come from it.
Yeah.
That's what I was afraid of. I was like, I'm too nosy to leave. Meaning Meaning I want to see a peak of restoration. I'm too nosy. Like, show me what restoration looks like. I was too nosy to leave. Mm-hmm. And that's what kept me there, because I did not want to be on the outskirts and then see you restored and be like, that's what I could have had. Excuse me. But that's what I was thinking. I was like, that would go over in my head. Like, here I am, we're divorced, and then you all restored and healed. And I'm like, is that what my restored husband looked like? Why did I leave? You know, I was too nosy. Mm-hmm. I wanted to know what was on the other side.
So you're saying you would have been mad now seeing me walk around here and we would have been together. You'd have been like, dang. This nigga, you know what I'm saying?
Tune your horn a little bit.
Y'all know.
But no, you're right. Mm-hmm. Because you are amazing. Like, I am so in love with you. You are amazing. And I wouldn't have never known, I promise you, in a million years that you would be the man you are today. From the years that we went through, you could not convince me that this would be who you are.
Yeah.
And so I'm glad I was nosy, because that's why I was afraid to leave, because I was like, what? I want to know what the other side looks like, because I know how God moves and I know how powerful he is. And so I just said, okay. And from that moment, I just had a new perspective. Now, did all of the old completely shut off? No, I had to practice newness. So when those old thoughts came up, instead of trying to, fight you with them, it was like, okay, hold back. If I need to get in the word, if I need to confess, if I need to talk to myself and be like, let that go, calm it down, be patient, open yourself. That's what I did. It took work. It wasn't easy. It wasn't like all of a sudden I got up from that floor and then everything was gone. Like, no, like it took practice. It took patience. It took moments of anger. It took moments of uncertainty. But I just said, I have to fight through this. Emotionally, it was hard. I had to then go to personal therapy to get through that. It was no longer just couples therapy. I needed to get my own therapist. Yeah. I needed to get my own accountability. I needed to do whatever I needed to do in order to see things forward.
Yeah. I kind of thinking about like where my breaking point was to kind of bring me to it, to when you were talking about all the different things that, because I do remember, and I mentioned this on the episode where I walked in the house, you asked me something, and I was on the floor, I blacked out, and you were praying over me and crying, and, like I said, I didn't remember where Kaylin was, and I remember when I got up off the floor, I was like, it's only a matter of time. I knew in my heart it's only a matter of time before everything crumbles. Mm-hmm. We were in the loft at the time, and there were so many different things that happened. It was around the same time that Nikki Bonner passed. Mm-hmm. It was around the time where we had to move out of that building that we were in. Mm-hmm. It was around the time, Jarvis, my other friend Jarvis, had passed away from cancer. It was so many different things that was just layered, and that was it. And when you're in a space and you have these breaking points and there's so much stress, absent-mindedness becomes a norm. I would forget some of the simplest things. I don't know if you would remember, but I would forget the most simplest things. I can't think of anything specific right now, but I would forget. Absent-mindedness was everything. And it took, even though that's when that happened, and that was in like 2016, it took 4-5 years for me to actually go to therapy and say enough is enough. Yeah. And I had completely let myself go mentally, spiritually, physically. You used to say I was a zombie. And I'm trying to say this without crying. Like, it was extremely, They say the lowest place that you can go is that's when you're forced to look up. When you're at rock bottom. And that's what it was for me. When I had hit rock bottom, I was tired of even trying to put on something as if I had anything together. I literally was even going through life que sera, sera. Like, whatever will be, will be. I remember flying down the highway sometimes. I'm talking about gunning down the highway, 105, 110. Whatever will be, will be. Like, if this is the way I got to go out, this is the way I got to go out. Yeah. I remember, and you probably remember this, like, we were leaving Target one day, and somebody cut me off in the parking lot, and I threw the car in park, and I stepped out the car, and I started yelling at them. Like, whatever will be, will be. If they strapped up, you know what I'm saying? Like, it is what it is. Like, I literally was like, there's nothing for me to live for. How do I get out of this? How do I get out of this prison? How do I get out of this? And it's not like, oh, I'm saying that the church was a prison, or I'm saying our marriage was a prison. No, whatever had been built, that stronghold, that structure, I didn't feel any freedom to be able to do anything because I couldn't talk to my spouse. Because every time I tried to talk to you or I wanted to talk to you, I couldn't communicate. You know, men generally, we know how we feel, but it's hard to put it into words. And so me, the type of person I am, if you ask me a question and you don't give me time to think about it, I'm going to respond with the worst possible answer alive. Yeah. And I remember you would ask me questions and I literally would just, and you would not give me no time to think. So I'll say just the dumbest, most, just the stupidest things just in order to get you to shut up. And I remember like being in that place and like I said, well, not like I said, but the only option that we had was fast forward, was to close the church and to really like take off the biggest stressor. Yeah. And that was the biggest stressor. I didn't know it at the time. I didn't believe it at the time. But that was the biggest stressor because we couldn't work on ourselves. No. There was no way that we could work on ourselves. 2 kids, a small growing church where we was pretty much
working on other people.
We was working on other people. And I always loved you. Like I always did. I was always in love with you. And what made me stay was I didn't want to walk out and like I go so hard. I was saying this before in one of the other episodes. I could go so hard for everything. Yeah, I go so hard. Like where I work now, I went hard for that job. Just everything that I do, I go so hard for it. And I didn't want to look back, and I didn't want to say I didn't go hard enough for her. Yeah. Or I didn't go hard enough for us. Which is why this podcast is called We Chose Us, right? Because we literally had to make a conscious decision to choose each other and continue to choose each other. Yeah.
So as we kind of close it out, why would you say don't rush restoration?
That is what the name of this episode is.
But why, why would you say?
You got to take, restoration, the path of restoration is different for different folks. And everything is in layers. And peeling back those layers, you may think you have a conversation and that layer is pulled back, but you ain't pull it back far enough. Or that's a semi-layer or a piece of a layer. And by not rushing restoration, number one, you get a chance to think. You get a chance to process. You get a chance to look at things in different angles. Say, for instance, when we did close the church, right? And I remember riding to my parents' house on a Sunday morning and I'm gonna be real with y'all. It was a Sunday morning thing. Y'all already know. You might be. I know on the east side what we used to do is we used to throw on Larry Tinsley, the Triple T from Tennessee. Y'all know what I'm talking about on V103, and them tunes would be on, right? And it was such a religious thing that I was doing. Oh, you listen to Christian music. This Christian music on Sunday morning, like it was that thing that I just did without any attachment to God. It was just something that I had done just for so many years. Mm-hmm. And I remember God's voice like, if you don't chill out.
Yeah.
And, you know, I was kind of like, chill out. And he said, I've never heard it so clearly. Change the station. Guess what? I changed the station, y'all. And I didn't change it to CCM or anything like that. Like I might have thrown on some UGK. I don't know. You know what I'm saying? A lot of y'all probably going to come at me in the comments on a Sunday, right? Come at me in the comments talking about, here's our pastor, shut up and listen to UGK. Y'all leave me alone. Listen, the reason why, though, is that I think God was trying to break me out of any norm that I had, all the way down to what I listened to on a Sunday morning when I could have been in church. Because we had when we closed the church, we stopped going to church. Like it was just like it was a full stop, and that was the one thing that I felt was like still kind of there. And it was like for about like a month, I didn't listen to no gospel music. I was just kind of like, okay, this is weird, but God was breaking something. God was showing me some different things. God was showing me that spending time with him did not need to be in the box of a Sunday morning, did not need to be in the box of praying an hour every morning at 5:00. Spending time with him was literally just spending time with him all day, every day, no matter what. And he was showing me something that he was always around. I taught that all the time. I had teaching saying that, hey, practice the presence of God, right? Like that was the whole deal, but I never did it. And it wasn't until then when I started doing that. And then that's when I feel like the restoration started to begin. He started showing me to do different things and leading me to different things and going back to, you know, my passion of tech and being able to, you know, excel in that. So yeah, you got to process it and you got to go through the layers and peel back the layers. You got to spend a lot of time with God, you and God. We can spend time with God. Like, here's what people do. It's so interesting because when I tell people to spend time with God, okay, I'm gonna spend time with God. So they go and they'll say, I got a plan together. You know, I got my Bible in the year and they got all these things to do. Right. And so they'll get a few sessions in if they're praying or studying or something like that. And they'll be like, nothing's happening. Okay, like if this is the way you're about to go about it, then nothing is going to happen because you're literally looking for like Jesus to come walking through the door to tell you something, and that's not even the case. You know, the case is being able to retrain your mind, retrain your thought, and be able to practice his presence and understand when he's around, and that takes time. Yeah. That isn't I'm going to spend an hour and read this and feel like the Holy Spirit is just going to come and just do all these different things. And you hear that so many different times. But the restoration piece is continuously doing it without the feeling of something actually happening. Yeah. You're just doing it because you enjoy doing it. And you're realizing that there's a piece there. You know what I mean? That there's more understanding that you could be getting. I could go on for days about that, but why would you say?
I mean, just to even tag on to what you said, it's like we spend more time together. Nothing's necessarily happening. It's the enjoyment. It's the quality. It is the building up of our relationship, right? But it's not like, poof, ooh, yay, something weird just happened while we were spending time together.
Yeah, like, no,
it's like, no, it's the building up, it's the growth. And so I would say not rushing restoration is enjoying the growth, is not being such in a rush to go back to where you were. Because I feel like a lot of times, a lot of relationships are redundant because it's like, let's say we had one set of pressure and then we're so quick. Okay, we're healed, we're whole. And that's what we do personally. I'm healed, I'm whole. Now let's go move forward. Lord, what's next? And God's like, don't rush restoration. enjoy where you are, enjoy the blessing. And that's how I feel so many times we can be in the midst of an answered prayer and not even know it because we're so quick to go to the next thing.
Yeah.
Because we don't sit and allow God to fill us to capacity with what he provided for us in the now because we're so ready and anxious for the next.
Yeah.
And I just believe not rushing restoration gets you into a space where you're like, God, I'll enjoy what you have for me now.
Yeah.
Whatever it is. Because I think we end up just getting crumbs because we don't sit and let him feed us the fullness of what he's prepared.
Yeah.
And so not rushing restoration for me is not quickly pushing our marriage into what's next, but God, I just want to sit in what you have now.
Yeah.
And that is like for many years, like 8 years, speaking with the counselor, forcing us to go on a date. We didn't have dates. And so now restoration is dating and actually taking the time to enjoy each other and not feeling like we have to be in a rush to just jump into something else and then try to figure out, all right, when is our date time? You know, it's like just allow God to fill your cup.
Yeah.
And if you feel like your cup is full, let him overflow it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Don't, okay, I'm full now, God, let's go.
Yeah.
Let him give you the overflow, you know, so that overflow will start feeding into what's next without you having to labor, you know, and that's what I feel is just soaking up everything that God has done and being grateful for what he's doing, but not quickly trying to rush to the next thing.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that's not just in our marriage, but let's even say people have said, I'm getting a divorce. And so after getting a divorce, you're quick to be like, all right, God, what's next? You know, who's next? Right. And God is like, but let me heal. And then if you feel healed, let me overflow.
Yeah.
Let me give you more. Let me show you more.
Yeah.
You know, so that more will feed what's next.
Yeah.
You get what I mean? And
absolutely. So we and I know we do need to close in a couple of minutes, but I do want to ask you this. You know, you talked about the breaking point. You talked about when you had the realization to kind of like let everything go. When did you realize that God had restored and just kind of like brought everything to just something different? Like, was there a point in your life where you were just kind of like, oh, wow?
No, there was not a defining point. I think that's what was weird was because out of nowhere, I just realized, we're in restoration. Like, we are actually working things out. There was no defining moment. It was just kind of like it came up just randomly in the process. And I'm looking around and I'm like, how did we get here? I remember asking myself that, like, how did we get here? When did this happen? How did this happen? And that's when I remember just thanking God, like, only you could have done this. Only you. And but there was no point. Thinking now, I can't go back and say, whoop, the table's turned right here. No, I can't. It was randomly looking up one day like, whoa.
Yeah.
This is not what I expected or imagined.
Yeah.
You literally blew my mind on this one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So.
Cool. Well, thanks everybody for joining us for this episode. Again, like, we really want you all to be able to share this, subscribe. If there's anybody that you know that is even going through anything like this, share this episode with them. I'm sure we're probably going to pull back some more layers because we jump into some of these stories, but there's like a lot of like details that we can really pull. But I don't want to spend like the whole episode on one story, you know. But if y'all feel like this is helping you, you know, let us know. Put something, you know, send something at show@wechoseus.com. Send us, one of us, a DM or something like that. If you got some questions or anything like that, we thank you all for just spending this time with us. We love you all so much, and we're thankful that we're able to share our restoration journey to be able to help you all get restored as well. Thank you so much, and we'll see you on the next one.
Cut.
Cut.
All right.